Hello, hello. It is Friday again. Again. It happens once every like 7 days or 6 days or so, Just I feel like these days are going by. They're going by. And the time went by very quickly because I'm a little late because I was in the mirror, you know, just looking cute for y'all. That's all. I had to make sure I was presentable for y'all today. So today's topic is about information and faith and how the information and faith and information. Yes. So I'm gonna do something for y'all, but let me get started here on my other platform real quick. You know what? And actually, before we start, I'm going to bring something that I've been doing mostly on TikTok because I just really have kind of wanted to get comfortable with, actually not comfortable, but like also growing my TikTok account in a different way. So we're going to do a little affirmation card today. I'm going to see how y'all respond to it here. Go ahead and get started on Instagram. If you guys want to go ahead and follow me on Instagram, Right Size Perspective, that is one of my main accounts. I got 3 accounts on Instagram, and all of them are really, they're me, but I've got one that is Perspective Counseling, which is mostly just my professional account. So like people like, so it's like my therapist identity. And then I've got Right Size Perspective, which is more of my coaching and health, my personal health journey. And then my Sarah Wilder, which is me all through and through. So it's like, why not post on all of them? So today, before we get started, we're going to do a little activity. Doesn't really matter. Like I of course would love to have people here in the live with me, so it is interactive. But I'm also really good at talking by myself and being by myself. I had to work pretty hard on being by myself, but now that I got here, I'm like, I don't know how to not be by myself anymore. It's kind of fun. It's very peaceful. Sometimes it's a little, it's weird. Like it's not almost too peaceful. I get in my head a little bit. But I think it really does. It's a skill that I think a lot of people in this country and in the world really could use. A lot of people have it because I learned it from somewhere, but it's a skill being alone. But I can talk a lot by myself, as you've already seen. But today we're going to be talking about the intersection of information and faith. So this is kind of a new direction I'm going with, but I have a point. But before we do that, we're going to do one of my favorite activities that I do with my clients. You can easily get these on Amazon or in Target. I think they're about $15. And they're affirmation cards. So I do these with my clients to kind of send them off into their week after a session with me to really look at, okay, what can you find intention with this week? How can you apply this card, or you can find this card in your day, in your week, until the next time I see you, until you get your own deck. I don't know, however you want to apply it. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull a card. Let's see what comes up here. Generosity. I give generously to those around me, no matter how much or how little I have. I know there's more than enough to go around, and that the key is to allow it to keep going around without stopping. If I stop the flow, I'm like the one person at the stadium who doesn't do the wave. Yeah, we all know we don't want to be that person. So, generosity, again, so this is more of an affirmation card and about like how can you find this and apply this in your day. So really, so I have this uncanny ability to relate these concepts in my head. So generosity, actually, it feel like it leads kind of right into at least the end point of what I want to talk about. Should I start at the end though? I don't know. No, I guess I'll loop it back around when it comes back around. But you can be generous and find a way to be generous when you don't feel like there's any purpose or reason that you need to, because like people are not being generous to you. Actually, how that relates to the topic I'm going to talk about today is that you literally have to be the person that you want to be to, or other people to be to you. That is how you align with transformation. I guess you can call it like be the change. I have that as a tagline on my Instagram. But I think it's, really about showing up as the way that you want to be treated in the world. Not everyone's going to treat you that way. You are not always going to get and be treated the way that you want to be treated. But if you allow it to shift you in your character, then and you happen to be like a generous person, but because you've been taken from so much and you let that shift you away from like being a generous person, then you actually do yourself a disservice because you close yourself off to the power of the universe. And that's where I'm going to get a little bit of more of my faith-based talk in there. So generosity, I'm going to I'll make this apply a little bit more. So I want to get into, what does information and faith have in common? A lot of them, they actually don't have too much in common. I was having this conversation with a client this week about what their understanding of faith is. And I realized, in my story, and this is to talk more about my stuff, is that in my story, I started my journey without much of a faith system. I did not have a really strong relationship with religion growing up. I was baptized Catholic. I joke saying that I'm a recovering Catholic just because my mom definitely, is characterized by the principles of more Christianity now, but Catholicism during the time that I was exposed to Catholicism. And my recollection of it was that it's just very rigid. And I feel like that's why I say I'm a recovering Catholic, and I think a lot of other Catholics have some sentiment or relation to that sentiment. And there is this rigidity in the way that we abide by the certain laws of what Catholicism is. And then you look at religion as a whole, at other religions, and I think there's a degree of that rigidity in the information that comes along with having a faith system. And I wanted to talk about that, how that interacts with mental health. And when you've been in a rigid way of thinking for so long, there are potentially going to be things that are consequential. And you see that often as a result in what leads people into the mental health world and diagnoses and certain diagnoses and clinical outcomes of religion as one example, just one example. But I wanted to take religion as the context off and look at, okay, what's information and how does information actually help or not help? What are the pros and cons of information? And so when you're talking about, let's go with anxiety. I'm going to say that's a little bit more, it's complicated, but it's basic. It's basically complicated. So we look at what is too much information and what's too little information. So I want you guys to think about a time that you've been stressed, that you've been anxious about something, and you did not have information. So what this looks like with other people, a lot of times this can come up in dating, so you don't get closure for something. If you are by yourself, if you don't have, like if someone just tells you something and they don't explain anything, so you don't have enough information and that like alarm system goes off, that anxiety peaks. I call it an inside joke, I guess, of anxiety is that if you, someone tells you that they need to talk, that is a prime example is if you do not have enough information, but you start to feel anxious. So this is where information can actually trigger a mental health concern. It can trigger stress in the lack thereof, or now on the other side, we have the abundance of. So when you have too much information, This can look like, and with other people, you will get that like TMI feeling, like someone has shared too much, and you're like, didn't really need to know that. Doesn't necessarily cause you a mental health issue, but now it makes you uncomfortable. Now you're in the position where you have to say like, okay, am I going to say something? Am I going to go back to the acronym that I talked about a couple weeks ago? Think of like, do I need to be thoughtful? Do I need to be helpful? Is this like, how do I respond to too much information? But a lot of the times, and I know I've been guilty of this, I will say too much information and it will actually confuse the other person. And that may not necessarily be an anxious response for them, but if I've confused someone else, guess who's anxious? Because I can read the communication of that person that they're not understanding me. They don't understand the information I just gave them. And now if I'm an anxious person, which I've had a lot of anxious attachments, and recovering from anxiety is a lot of energy. It's a lot of freaking work. But when you recover, you're now in a position, I'm sorry. Yeah, when you recover, you are now in a position where you have to deal with that discomfort. So regardless of whether it's anxiety or whether it's someone doesn't process as anxiety, it causes stress within a dyad, within someone else. Now, if you're by yourself, like if this is a micro individual situation, too little information. So that we just kind of talked about that, and it's like someone telling you, oh, I need to talk, and you don't have enough information. That causes anxiety, that causes stress on the body. Now you got to go deal with that before you really can receive any more information, because I think we all know is that when someone actually is activated, they don't hear the same things because they haven't necessarily addressed the problem, the alarm system going off in their mind. But if you are by yourself and you have too much information, and this is where I think a lot of people, maybe we underestimate where things can get really, really complicated. And that is, because I see this all the time, I literally designed my resource library with a video to help you guys not do this, is Googling things, health anxiety. When you don't have enough information and you go searching for information on a vast, immense world of the internet, where there lies a whole lot of other opinions that are based in some experience, but some experience and training and research, then you get information overload. And this is where, I mean, both sides of the coin can cause lack of product. And I'm going to use productivity in the sense of like just being able to accomplish the next moment, not necessarily like striving for your goals, but it can be that as well. But when you get information overload, that is like someone dumping a whole pile of mulch on your yard without a shovel. And you have nothing to go through that information with, or because you're still on ground zero reacting. And that's not even if you have a diagnosable anxiety disorder. That's just natural human consequence. So say let's use myself for a moment, because I am a very ambitious person. I've just been trained to be. I think that's part of white culture, but we won't go there right now. But I get information overload quite often, because part of anxiety is that we feel like we're at a constant deficit, because in a way we kind of are. We want to find more information because that's what information, if you're an intellectualizer like I am, information will shut it down. Information will help. Information is instant gratification. So this is where my addictions background comes in. And this is why I don't want addictions to be let me rephrase that. I want addictions to be something that people approach with some curiosity, because it lives among us everywhere in denial, and keeping yourself closed off from information about it is really the demise of your life, right? Like if you deny something, you are denying yourself and you're denying someone else access to, whether it's information about you or information that you need about another person to be successful within that dyad. So you're going back to the point of like, when you have all this information dumped on you, then what you freeze. Like, you've caused your own stress response, and literally no one else is to blame. And this is why I don't use blame, because then when you start blaming yourself, it's even more chaos that has less outcomes for you. And then you're just stuck in the cycle that I can't explain. I can explain it to multiple people in one day, but I'm not going to do that on this live particularly. But it is literally just a cycle, keeps going, going, and going. And the only thing that can break it in the moment, and you've seen, I'm going to continue to say it, this is where it's like, my mom trained me to not be repetitive, but hey, guess what? I have to be repetitive for a living, because some people really have that much anxiety, that much backlog of trauma and stress that they need to hear things over and over and over again. And if I am the person that gets frustrated at having to do that and helps remind someone over and over again, hey, you've got the resources that it takes to get to where you want to be, then guess what? I'd be a really shitty therapist. I wouldn't be here talking the way that I am with you guys now, because I would never have had the motivation to go about my life doing it differently, because I'm going to give myself some credit here. When I started becoming a good therapist, I actually started practicing and hearing myself with my clients and actually practicing what I was preaching, because I was doing the same thing. And sometimes people have to repeat themselves for me. But over the course of my own recovery, and part of how when I started aligning with that concept of transformation, now there's a lot of things that go into aligning with transformation, if you have not noticed. That's why I was like, I'm going to do this slow. And there's a lot of things to consider when you want to transform your life, because there's a lot of time that you have to do it. It's not going to happen in just one day. You have to learn consistency. You have to learn that discipline, not only internally, but with your external and using your external environment. So I really want people to take away that when you have too much information, which is why I'm going to try to keep this even shorter than my usual amount of time, is because when you have too much information, you put yourself in analysis paralysis. You're starting to analyze and organize all that information, and you have to figure out how to categorize it as well. If not, it's just kind of lingering there. So again, I use the metaphor of like mulch in the garden, right? And you don't have a shovel. You don't have any kind of system of like where you are going to put that mulch in your garden. Let's bring it inside the house. That's like going to the thrift store or the free market and grabbing everything, things that you don't need, and finding a place to put them. There's no place to put things you don't need in your house. There's just not. So when we receive and we go seek information out of urgency because we're anxious, then we're likely to run into a situation that's going to exacerbate our anxiety, or we're going to end up having information that's really not necessary for our need to either calm down or handle the solution. So one of the biggest ones I wanted to just I think, because the concept of closure is for people with trauma, relationships, everything. Closure was even a concept that crossed my mind, which is almost derailed this particular talk into something else. But we as humans think information is going to be the closure concept for our needs. And sometimes it can, but if you are not prepared for that closure, then it can cause you panic. And so this is the conundrum of transformation, because not every situation is going to be a solution. Not every situation that works for closure would be nice with half the things that we have going on in life, but it may not be the solution. And what I mean by that is preparation is better than panic. But if you panic, you can't prepare. So this is where it's this revolving cycle of how it can really just kind of perpetuate the problem if you allow your instant gratification of wanting information of what you feel like you need right now, but that's not necessarily a need, because if you don't have it right now it's because you're not supposed to have it. And this is where that faith concept comes in. And like I said earlier, I did not have a strong faith system when I first started this transformation journey. And looking back, I feel like that was a reason why it took me a little bit longer. I can't even really make that judgment. I don't believe that it took me that long. It took me as long as it needed to, but I did not have a faith system that I really felt secure in until in the last year and a half. And that was, I think, right on time for how I was able to receive it, because I had worked on the inner work of knowing that if I don't have information right now, it's because I'm not supposed to get it. That shit was hard. It was really uncomfortable too. It was really uncomfortable to sit there and like, yo, so with food, that looks like, yo, I really want this Bojangles. I really want this Cinnabiscuit. I really want this soda. And waiting, delaying that gratification, just 30 minutes, 5 minutes at least. Start with 5. Start with 1, is telling yourself no for a shorter period of time. If it's something that you need to do intentionally in whatever you're trying to build discipline with. But if it is something that you feel like is coming from the outside world that you're entitled to receive, which this is more of a personal note, entitlement is a trigger word for me because we are not entitled to anything in this world. And your access to information at that point is now a desire. It's not a necessity. You will be delivered that information once you are ready to receive it. And if you are not prepared to receive it, this is where a lot of people, it exacerbates the issue. It makes anxiety worse. Because it's coming into a world and a mind of chaos. So it's just gonna spit it up and throw it out. It's like a garbage disposal. If your thoughts are moving that fast, if your belief system's messed up. So if you get closure, you're still not going to necessarily believe that you either deserve it or that you had any accountability. Those are usually the 2 outcomes in the cases that I see in the people that I work with. So dealing with closure comes down to faith. And developing and finding a faith system. Now, in the recovery world, I think the word God, I know the word, it's abundant in the 12 steps, but it is probably one of the biggest words that causes a lot of upset for some. And because there's a large amount of the recovery, at least the substance use recovery population that I have interacted with, that the concept of faith automatically means God, automatically means religion, and it can't just mean security. I do believe that it needs to graduate to a higher power, something outside of yourself, because clearly if you don't have the information and you become anxious, then you don't have that power to get that information. So something outside of yourself is more powerful than you. You don't have to call it God. You don't have to call it anything. In fact, I have a worksheet where I redid and made the Serenity Prayer with like a Mad Lib is like insert your own higher power, if that is yourself or that is a concept of yourself that you're working on building trust back with yourself and faith with yourself. So be it. But developing a faith system will also help with that anxiety, with that stress, with that consistency, making sure that you stay aligned, mind, body, soul, with transformation. And from my experience, building a faith system is a whole task and job in itself. So give yourself some time there. So what do you do? And this was the point of kind of what the card brought up when I first started this. What do you do in the meantime? And I will say I very rarely try to just give advice because I can't make a decision about your life. And I don't want that responsibility either to say, hey, do this, but and do it this way, because I'm not you, you're not me. I can't guarantee you're going to do it just like that, but I can give you a guideline. So I'm going to try to give you a little bit of a guideline with what do you do if you don't have a faith system until you develop one. You're anxious, you want information, you want closure, is be the closure. Be the closure and do something different than what everyone else is doing. Because if you're not getting something from someone else, if that closure is like, let's say a relationship, right? is if you're not getting that affirmation from that person, you need to be the person that you need you to be. That's your moment to show up and affirm and validate what it is that you need. You can even just recognize, like, I really need some closure. I feel like I really need some information right now. More than likely, you don't necessarily need that, because unless you receive it right then apparently you did need it, and that's what you called for and you asked for that. But being the person that you need you to be, or someone else to be for you. And that is challenging, but that's the only thing that you can do. Unless you go to therapy, and then we can hopefully be that person for you until you develop that skill, because it is a skill. It takes time. But I really, in context, a lot of that looks like making and doing the hard thing, saying the hard thing. Let's talk about closure again, right? I think from my experience, that's actually something that I challenged myself to do and practice early on in my journey, was because when I was dating and I was, out there meeting people, and the concept of ghosting, oh my God, eye roll. It is exhausting. But I had to be honest with myself. I had ghosted people before. And so the fact that I was getting ghosted, I was not receiving the information that I wanted, which was, hey, tell someone to tell me that I'm not interested, because yes, I feared rejection. I didn't really want someone to tell me that, but I would rather have someone tell me that than not tell me anything at all. And so what I did was I started, when I was in situations where I wanted to ghost people, I said the harder thing. I said the truthful, honest thing with kindness, but I said it with recognition that I was not the one that was engaged with this, that I did not want to pursue it, but I wish them the best of luck. So I gave that person what I would want to hear. And that started to slowly bring my confidence to me about how I could communicate when I was uncomfortable, how I could manage my own anxiety because of something that I felt like I was lacking, and how I started showing up for a version of me that I wanted to be, that I wasn't quite there yet. So I feel like generosity is, I didn't have to do that, but I was considering what I didn't have and what I wanted other people to experience. And so in a way, it was a form of generosity. So that's what just made me think at the beginning. So when I was talking about that, that's what made me think about generosity, is that, we're able to give when we don't feel like we have much to give. And I don't mean keep on doing that to the point where you are on empty and suicidal and stuff like that. But yeah, if it's something small that you can continue to give until you feel like maybe you don't get it, then it usually comes back to you. It's that investment in the universe and that faith in the universe that the information that you feel like you are lacking, you're going to be okay without it regardless. So I hope that was helpful. And I hope you guys can go into the unknown with a little bit more trust in how, things keep working out. You eventually receive what it is that you need in terms of information. And the hope is that it doesn't make things worse. And if it does make things worse, make sure you hit me up, because something's not working out. I'm going to put my website here, the links for my website. You can go ahead and go to the website. Everything on the app right now is completely free. I will be launching some of my course and my subscription soon, so stay tuned for that. Sign up for the the email list, and because I will keep you notified of when I do launch those. And I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I will see you again next Friday.